Have you ever wondered how a single moment can redirect the entire course of someone's life? How one decision, made in the span of a heartbeat, can ripple outward and touch dozens of souls? This is the story of two people who collided at exactly the right moment, when both were drowning in their own darkness, neither knowing they were about to become each other's lifeline. The rain hammered against the floor-to-ceiling windows of Carter Hayes' corner office on the 42nd floor. Below, the city sprawled like a circuit board, millions of lights blinking in the November darkness. Carter stood with his hands in his pockets, watching water streak down the glass, feeling nothing. 38 years old, self-made tech entrepreneur, net worth north of $2 billion. Featured on magazine covers, invited to speak at conferences worldwide, and completely, utterly hollow inside. His therapist, Dr. Michelle Santos, had a name for what he was experiencing. Anhedonia, the inability to feel pleasure. Carter called it Tuesday. "Mr. Hayes." His assistant's voice crackled through the intercom. "Your car is waiting downstairs." Carter didn't respond immediately. He was staring at his reflection in the darkened window, a ghost in an expensive suit. When did he become this person? The man who automated his entire life, who scheduled 30-minute blocks for meals, who hadn't laughed genuinely in months. "Thank you, Rebecca," he finally said, his voice flat. The elevator ride down felt like descending into cold water. Each floor that passed reminded him of another achievement that failed to fill the void. 18th floor, the merger that made him a billionaire. 23rd floor, the product launch that changed an industry. 31st floor, the divorce papers he signed without feeling anything at all. His ex-wife, Jennifer, had said something during their last conversation that haunted him. "You're the loneliest person I've ever known. And you don't even realize it because you've confused accomplishment with connection." She was right. He knew she was right. But knowing didn't change anything. Carter stepped out into the rain-soaked street. His driver, Thomas, held an umbrella and opened the car door with practiced efficiency. "Evening, Mr. Hayes. Straight home?" "Yes," Carter replied, sliding into the leather interior. Then, impulsively, "Actually, no. Drive through downtown. The long way." Thomas nodded without questioning, as always. One of the many people Carter paid to never ask why. As the car glided through rain-slicked streets, Carter watched the city pass. Coffee shops closing up. Late-shift workers trudging home. A group of college students laughing under a shared umbrella. Normal people living normal lives, probably worrying about rent and relationships and real things. Carter couldn't remember the last time he worried about something that mattered. They were stopped at a red light near Pioneer Square when Carter noticed the bus shelter. Inside, huddled against the plexiglass, was a woman with a child. The woman held a cardboard sign, but the rain had made the words run together into an illegible blur. The little girl, maybe 6 or 7, pressed against her mother's side, shivering in a coat too thin for November weather. The light turned green. Thomas accelerated. "Stop," Carter heard himself say. "Sir, stop the car. Pull over here." Thomas did so without hesitation, though Carter caught the slight raise of his eyebrows in the rearview mirror. In 3 years of employment, Carter had never made an unscheduled stop. Carter stepped out into the rain before he could talk himself out of it. The cold hit him immediately, soaking through his wool coat. He walked toward the bus shelter, his Italian leather shoes splashing through puddles. The woman looked up as he approached, her body instinctively shifting to shield her daughter. Her eyes were dark with exhaustion and wariness. She couldn't have been older than 30, but her face carried the weight of someone who'd aged decades in months. "I'm sorry," Carter said, stopping a respectful distance away. "I don't mean to intrude. Are you okay?" It was a stupid question. Obviously, they weren't okay. The woman's jaw tightened. We're fine. Just waiting for the bus. The little girl coughed. A deep, wet sound that made Carter wince. Her cheeks were flushed with fever. That doesn't sound good, Carter said gently. Has she seen a doctor? We have an appointment, the woman said defensively. Next week, when the clinic has an opening. Carter noticed the woman's hands trembling slightly. Not from cold, but from the effort of maintaining composure, of protecting her child's dignity even in this moment. I'm Carter, he said, crouching down to the little girl's level despite the rain. What's your name? The girl looked at her mother for permission. The woman hesitated, then gave a tiny nod. Emma, the girl whispered. I'm 7 3/4. 7 3/4 is a very important age, Carter said seriously. Emma, would you and your mom let me buy you both some dinner? There's a diner just around the corner. It's warm, and they make excellent hot chocolate. Emma's eyes lit up at the mention of hot chocolate, but her mother's expression hardened. We don't need charity, she said firmly. I'm not offering charity, Carter replied, standing up. I'm offering company. To be honest, I was just sitting in my car feeling sorry for myself, and I realized I haven't had a real conversation with another human being in weeks. You'd be doing me a favor. The woman studied him for a long moment, clearly trying to determine if this was genuine or some elaborate trick. Carter understood her hesitation. In her position, he'd be suspicious too. My name is Rachel, she finally said, and I need to tell you up front. I can't pay you back for dinner. Not now, maybe not ever. I don't want you to, Carter said. Please, just let me do this one decent thing today. Rachel looked down at Emma, whose teeth were chattering despite her attempts to hide it. Maternal instinct won over pride. Okay, she said quietly. Thank you. The diner was a relic from another era. Red vinyl booths, black and white checkered floors, a jukebox in the corner playing oldies. The warmth hit them like a wave as they entered, and Emma immediately stopped shivering. A waitress with kind eyes and gray hair named Dorothy showed them to a corner booth. Carter noticed how carefully Rachel moved, making sure Emma was seated comfortably, tucking her wet coat around her like a blanket. 3 hot chocolates, Carter told Dorothy. And bring us some menus, please. Actually, Dorothy said, looking at Emma with a gentle smile, we just made fresh apple pie. You want a slice while you look at the menu? Sweetheart. Emma looked at her mother with hopeful eyes. Rachel nodded, her throat working as she swallowed emotion. Yes, please, Emma whispered. When Dorothy walked away, an awkward silence settled over the table. Carter realized he had no idea how to make small talk anymore. All his conversations were transactional. Deals, strategies, quarterly projections. How long have you been? He started, then stopped, unsure how to finish the question without sounding insensitive. Homeless, Rachel finished for him. 6 weeks, since we got evicted. She said it matter-of-factly, but Carter saw the shame flickering beneath the surface. I was a teacher, she continued, her fingers nervously tracing patterns on the tabletop. 3rd grade, but Emma got really sick last year, leukemia and the medical bills. Even with insurance, they buried us. I took time off work to be with her at the hospital. Lost the job, couldn't make rent, and here we are. But Emma's okay now? Carter asked, looking at the little girl who was coloring on the paper placemat with a crayon Dorothy had brought. In remission for 8 months, Rachel said, and for the first time, her expression softened with genuine joy. She beat it. She's the strongest person I know. Emma looked up and smiled, and Carter felt something crack in his chest, a fissure in the ice he'd been encased in. Dorothy returned with the hot chocolate and pie. Emma's eyes widened as if she'd been presented with a treasure. "Can I, Mom?" she asked. "Of course, baby." They ordered dinner. Soup and sandwiches? Nothing extravagant. But Rachel's hands shook slightly as she took the first bite, and Carter realized it might have been days since she'd had a real meal. "What do you do?" Rachel asked him between bites. Carter hesitated. Usually, when people heard he was wealthy, everything changed. They became deferential, calculating, false. "I run a technology company," he said vaguely. "Mostly software development." "That sounds interesting," Rachel said, though Carter suspected she was just being polite. "It used to be," he admitted. "Now it's just meetings and numbers and decisions that feel like they don't matter." Rachel tilted her head, studying him. "That's a strange thing to say when you clearly have everything." "Do I?" Carter met her gaze. "I have money and success and a penthouse apartment I hate being in. But I can't remember the last time I felt like anything mattered." He surprised himself with the honesty. Dr. Santos would have been pleased. "At least you have a home to hate being in," Rachel said, but not unkindly. There was no bitterness in her tone, just stating a fact. "You're right," Carter acknowledged. "I'm sorry. That was insensitive." "No," Rachel shook her head. "I think loneliness comes in different packages. Yours just happens to be wrapped in expensive paper." They talked for nearly 2 hours. Rachel told him about teaching, about the students she missed, about Emma's love for books and butterflies and the way she saw magic in everything. Carter found himself sharing things he'd never told anyone. How he'd built his company from nothing, sleeping in his car for 6 months, living on ramen and determination. How success, when it finally came, felt anticlimactic. How he'd lost touch with everyone who knew him before he became wealthy. "I had this friend in college," Carter said, staring into his cooling coffee. "Daniel. We were inseparable. Started the company together in my garage. But as we grew, as the money came in, he started saying I'd changed. That I cared more about growth metrics than people. We had a huge fight about laying off 12 employees to increase profit margins. He said I'd become the kind of person we started the company to compete against." "What happened?" Rachel asked softly. "I bought him out. Told myself he was holding us back. That sentiment doesn't build empires." Carter's voice dropped. "He was right, though. I did change. I became exactly what he accused me of being." Emma had fallen asleep against her mother's shoulder, her small body finally warm and fed and safe. Rachel stroked her daughter's hair absently. "It's not too late," Rachel said. "To change again, people aren't fixed. We're all just making choices, moment by moment." "Is that what you tell your students?" Carter asked. "It's what I tell myself," she replied. "When I'm terrified that Emma will remember her childhood as the time we lived in a car." Carter made a decision then, one that would have horrified the calculating businessman he'd become. "I have a proposition," he said carefully. "I own a building downtown. There's an empty apartment on the 3rd floor. 2 bedrooms, fully furnished. My company was going to use it for visiting executives, but we rarely do. It's just sitting there." Rachel's expression immediately became guarded. "We can't afford." "I'm not asking you to pay," Carter interrupted. "I'm asking you to use it, temporarily, until you get back on your feet. No strings, no expectations. Just a safe, warm place for you and Emma to sleep." "Why would you do that?" Rachel's voice was thick with suspicion and desperate hope. "Honestly," Carter looked at Emma's sleeping face, peaceful in a way he couldn't remember ever feeling. "Because your daughter just asked me what my favorite book was. and I realized I haven't read a book for pleasure in 5 years. Because you looked at me like I was a human being instead of a checkbook. Because maybe helping you will help me remember how to be the person I used to be." Tears welled in Rachel's eyes. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll think about it," Carter offered. "Here's my card. The building address is on there. If you decide you want to take me up on it, just show up tomorrow. The doorman's name is Frank. I'll leave instructions for him." Rachel took the card with trembling fingers, reading it over and over as if the words might disappear. Rachel stood outside the building the next morning, Emma's small hand clasped in hers. The address matched the card. The building was beautiful, pre-war architecture, recently renovated, in one of the safest neighborhoods downtown. Too good to be true, a voice in her head warned. There has to be a catch. But Emma was coughing again, and it had rained all night, and Rachel's car had developed a leak that left them both soaked and shivering. Desperation overrode caution. The doorman, an older black man with kind eyes and a warm smile, looked up as they entered. "You must be Rachel," he said before she could speak. "Mr. Hayes called this morning. I'm Frank. Welcome." He handed her 2 keys and a handwritten note. "3rd floor, apartment 3C. Everything you need should be there. If it's not, call me. Carter." A phone number was written at the bottom. Frank insisted on helping them upstairs with their few belongings, 2 garbage bags containing everything they owned. He chatted pleasantly with Emma about her favorite TV shows, making the little girl giggle. When Frank unlocked the apartment door, Rachel nearly cried. It wasn't just furnished. It was beautiful. Hardwood floors, large windows flooding the space with natural light, a kitchen with modern appliances, a bathroom with a tub. The bedrooms had real beds with clean linens. The refrigerator was stocked with basics: milk, eggs, bread, fresh fruit. "Mr. Hayes wanted to make sure you were comfortable," Frank said. "He also mentioned Emma likes butterflies, so he had these delivered this morning." He pointed to Emma's bedroom, where butterfly decals decorated the walls and a butterfly nightlight glowed softly beside the bed. Emma ran into the room and squealed with delight. Rachel covered her mouth, overwhelmed. "I don't understand," she whispered. "Why is he doing this?" Frank smiled gently. "Mr. Hayes is a complicated man, but I've worked for him for 6 years, and I've never seen him do anything like this. Whatever his reasons, they're genuine. You can trust that." After Frank left, Rachel walked through the apartment in a daze. Emma was already arranging her few toys on the bookshelf in her room, talking to herself about which stuffed animal should sleep where. Rachel collapsed onto the couch and allowed herself to cry, really cry, for the first time in weeks. Relief, gratitude, disbelief, fear that it wouldn't last. All of it poured out in great, gasping sobs. "Mommy!" Emma appeared in the doorway, concerned. "I'm okay, baby," Rachel managed, wiping her face. "These are happy tears." Emma climbed into her lap, her small arms wrapping around Rachel's neck. "Is this our new home?" she asked. "For now," Rachel said carefully. "Mr. Carter is letting us stay here while Mommy finds a new job." "He's nice," Emma declared. "I like him." "Me too," Rachel admitted softly. "Me too." Over the next 3 weeks, Rachel threw herself into rebuilding. She updated her resume, applied for teaching positions, registered Emma for school in their new district. The principal, Mrs. Henderson, was understanding about their situation and waived several fees when Rachel explained they were between permanent housing. Emma thrived. The consistent meals, warm showers, and safe environment worked miracles. Her cough disappeared. Color returned to her cheeks. She made friends at school and came home each day bursting with stories. Carter checked in periodically, always respectful, never intrusive. Sometimes he'd text Rachel, "Everything okay? Need anything?" Other times he'd send gift cards to local grocery stores with notes like, "Saw these were on sale. Thought Emma might like cereal that turns milk blue." Rachel tried to maintain boundaries, to remind herself this was temporary, but it became increasingly difficult. Carter wasn't just providing shelter. He was present in small, meaningful ways. One evening, there was a knock on the apartment door. Rachel opened it to find Carter standing there with takeout bags and an uncertain expression. "I hope this isn't weird," he said quickly. "I was in the neighborhood, and I thought maybe you two would like dinner? But if this is crossing a line, I completely understand." "It's not weird," Rachel interrupted, smiling. "Come in. Emma will be thrilled." Emma was indeed thrilled. She showed Carter every corner of her room, explaining the elaborate backstories she created for each stuffed animal. Carter listened with genuine interest, asking questions and laughing at her dramatic narration. They ate Chinese food at the small dining table, and the conversation flowed easily. Carter told them about his day, a disastrous board meeting where the projector died and a senior vice president accidentally sent an email complaining about the CEO to the entire company, including the CEO. "What did you do?" Rachel asked, trying not to laugh. "Pretended it never happened," Carter said with a grin. "Sometimes leadership is knowing when to develop sudden selective blindness." Emma giggled. "That's silly." "Most of business is silly when you really think about it," Carter admitted. After dinner, Rachel put Emma to bed while Carter did the dishes, insisting it was only fair. When Rachel returned to the living room, she found him standing by the window, looking out at the city lights. "Thank you," she said softly, "for tonight, for everything." "I should be thanking you," Carter replied, turning to face her. "These past few weeks, talking to you and spending time with Emma, I feel like I'm waking up from a long sleep, like I'm remembering who I used to be before I lost myself in ambition." "Who were you?" Rachel asked, genuinely curious. Carter thought for a moment. "Someone who believed technology could improve people's lives. Someone who coded all night because the problem was fascinating, not because it would make money. Someone who had friends, real friends, not just networking contacts." "That person's still in there," Rachel said. "You just forgot how to let him out." They stood in comfortable silence for a while, the city humming below them. "I got an interview," Rachel said suddenly. "At Lincoln Elementary, second grade position. It's next week." "That's wonderful," Carter said, and he genuinely meant it, even though he felt a strange pang at the thought of Rachel not needing his help anymore. "If I get the job," Rachel continued, "I'll be able to afford a place of my own. A small place, but ours." "That's what you want?" Carter asked carefully. "It's what I need," Rachel corrected. "I need to stand on my own feet again, to show Emma that we can survive, that we can build our lives back up." Carter nodded, understanding. "You'll get the job. Any school would be lucky to have you." The interview went brilliantly. Rachel was offered the position starting after winter break. She accepted immediately, relief and joy flooding through her. But that evening, when she told Emma the news, her daughter's reaction surprised her. "Does that mean we have to leave?" Emma asked, her voice small. "Eventually, yes," Rachel said gently. "We'll find our own apartment. It'll be an adventure." Emma's lower lip trembled. "But I like it here, and I don't want to leave Mr. Carter. He's our friend." Rachel's heart clenched. She'd been so focused on maintaining independence that she hadn't considered Emma had formed an attachment. Neither had she, if she was honest with herself. When Carter came by later that week with pizza and a new book for Emma, Rachel pulled him aside while Emma was washing her hands. "I need to talk to you about something," she said quietly. Okay, Carter said, immediately concerned. Is everything all right? I got the job, Rachel began. That's fantastic. Carter's face lit up. It is, Rachel agreed. But it means we'll be moving out soon. I'll be able to afford rent again, and Emma needs to see that we can make it on our own. Carter's expression faltered for just a moment before he recovered. Of course. That's wonderful, Rachel. Really. The thing is, Rachel continued, Emma's gotten attached to this place but also to you. She considers you a friend. And I'm worried that when we leave, I'll still be her friend, Carter said firmly. If that's okay with you, I'll visit or you both can come over. This doesn't have to be an ending. You're a billionaire CEO, Rachel said softly. You have a million demands on your time. Once we're gone, won't it be easier to just forget about us? Carter took her hands, surprising them both. Rachel, I told you that first night that you were helping me as much as I was helping you. That's even more true now. Emma reminds me what joy looks like. You remind me what strength looks like. I don't want to lose that. I don't want to lose you both. There was something in his eyes Rachel couldn't quite name. Something that made her heart race. Okay, she whispered. We won't disappear. Promise? Carter asked, his voice rough with emotion. Promise. Emma called from the other room that the pizza was getting cold, breaking the moment. But as they ate dinner together, laughing at Emma's knock-knock jokes and debating whether pineapple belonged on pizza, Rachel realized something terrifying and wonderful. She'd fallen for Carter Hayes. Not his money or status, but him. The man who listened to a 7-year-old's elaborate fantasy stories with complete attention. Who brought groceries without being asked. Who showed up consistently simply because he wanted to. And judging by the way he looked at her when he thought she wasn't watching, he felt the same way. December arrived with unexpected snowfall. Emma was ecstatic, having never seen Rayal accumulating snow before. Carter surprised them one Saturday morning, arriving with snow gear in Emma's size. Boots, coat, hat, mittens. Ready for a snow day? He asked with a grin. They spent hours in the park, building a snowman that looked suspiciously lopsided. Emma insisted they give it a butterfly-shaped nose made from a leaf she'd preserved from autumn. Carter and Rachel worked together, their gloved hands brushing, their laughter fogging the cold air. At one point, Emma ran ahead chasing a particularly fluffy snowflake, and Carter and Rachel found themselves alone for a moment. Thank you, Rachel said softly, for this, for all of it. I love seeing her happy, Carter replied. Then quieter, I love seeing you happy. Rachel met his eyes, her breath catching. The moment stretched, fragile and electric. Carter, she started. Snow attack, Emma shouted, pelting them both with loosely packed snowballs. They chased her, laughing, the serious conversation postponed but not forgotten. That evening, after Emma had fallen asleep exhausted and happy, Carter and Rachel sat together on the couch with mugs of hot tea. I have something to tell you, Carter said, his voice nervous in a way Rachel had never heard before. Okay, she said, turning to face him fully. I'm falling in love with you, he said simply. I didn't mean to. I didn't plan it. But somewhere between that first night at the diner and now, you became the most important person in my life. You and Emma both. Rachel's eyes filled with tears. I feel the same way, and it terrifies me. Why? Carter asked gently. Because I've been dependent on you, Rachel explained. You saved us, gave us shelter and safety when we had nothing. How do I know these feelings are real and not just gratitude? How do you know you don't just have some kind of savior complex? I don't have the answers to those questions, Carter admitted. But I know that when I'm with you, I feel like myself again, the best version of myself. And when Emma talks about her day at school, I care more about her stories than I do about quarterly earnings reports. That's not love, Rachel said softly. That's just being human. Maybe for some people, Carter replied. But I'd forgotten how. You taught me again. Rachel leaned her head against his shoulder. I got the apartment. I signed the lease today. We move in January 15th. Carter's arm came around her shoulders. That's good. That's what you needed to do. But I don't want to lose this, Rachel whispered. Whatever this is. You won't, Carter promised. We'll figure it out. No pressure, no expectations. We'll just see where it goes. They sat like that for a long time, watching snow fall past the window, both afraid to move and break the fragile peace between them. The next 6 weeks passed in a blur. Rachel prepared for her new job and apartment. Carter helped with the logistics, but carefully, always checking in before taking action. Never assuming, never overstepping. They spent Christmas together. Emma insisted Carter needed to be there to see her open presents. Rachel cooked dinner, a simple meal that somehow felt more special than any elaborate restaurant experience Carter had ever had. As midnight approached on New Year's Eve, with Emma asleep in her room, Carter and Rachel stood on the apartment balcony, watching fireworks bloom across the city sky. New year, new beginning, Rachel said softly. For all of us, Carter agreed. He turned to her, snowflakes catching in her hair, her cheeks pink from cold, and he knew with absolute certainty that he would spend the rest of his life trying to be worthy of the gift she'd given him. The ability to feel again. Can I kiss you? He asked. I thought you'd never ask, she whispered. The kiss was gentle, tentative, perfect. When they pulled apart, both were smiling. I love you, Carter said. I love you too, Rachel replied. God help us both. They laughed, their breath mingling in the cold air, and started the new year together. Moving day was chaotic. Emma was excited about her new room but sad about leaving Mr. Carter's building. Frank helped carry boxes, slipping Emma a stuffed butterfly as a housewarming gift that made her cry happy tears. The new apartment was modest. 2 small bedrooms, a kitchen barely large enough for one person, a living room that served as dining room and office. But it was theirs. Rachel had signed the lease, paid the deposit, stood on her own feet. Carter visited that first night with Chinese food and a bottle of wine for Rachel. To new beginnings, he toasted. To new beginnings, she echoed. They ate sitting on the floor because Rachel's furniture hadn't arrived yet. Emma fell asleep between them, exhausted from excitement. This is perfect, Rachel said, looking around at the bare walls and empty space. It really is, Carter agreed and meant it. Carter stood at the back of the elementary school auditorium, watching Rachel on stage. She was receiving the district's Teacher of the Year award, and pride filled his chest so intensely it ached. Emma, now 9, sat beside him, swinging her legs excitedly. That's my mom, she whispered loudly to the person next to her. I know, Carter whispered back with a grin. She's amazing. After the ceremony, they met Rachel outside. She was beaming, holding her plaque. I'm so proud of you, Carter said, pulling her into a hug. We're proud of you, Mom, Emma added, joining the hug. Later that evening, at the modest house they'd recently bought together, Carter and Rachel sat on the porch watching Emma chase fireflies in the yard. Did you ever imagine this? Rachel asked, leaning against him. Never, Carter admitted. But I'm grateful every day that you asked me for help that night. I never asked, Rachel corrected with a smile. You offered. Best decision I ever made. Emma ran up, carefully cupping a firefly in her hands. Look, it's magic. Carter knelt beside her. It really is, isn't it? As the firefly blinked its light and flew away, Carter realized that this, right here, was what he'd been missing all those years. Not success or money or achievement, but connection, love, family. Sometimes redemption arrives not in grand gestures, but in small moments of courage. A choice to stop the car, a decision to offer help, the willingness to open your heart one more time even when it's been closed for years. And sometimes, when you help someone else stand up, you discover that they've been holding out a hand to lift you too. Remember, no act of kindness, no matter how small, is ever wasted. Sometimes the person you help ends up saving you right back.